All right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Coffee Q&A. It is Wednesday, April 3rd. So how y'all doing? Welcome back. If you're just joining us for the first time, we do the Coffee Q&A every weekday morning from 10 a.m. onwards to talk about coffee, answer questions, and talk about coffee issues. So how y'all doing today? Welcome to the show. I'm Jay, your host. And today's question comes from Tamar Lasko. And she says, I'm using the Hario V60 with 20 grams of coffee and to 12 ounces of water. Shouldn't it only take 3 minutes to brew? I'm at 6 minutes after blooming, but look how coarse I grind. Help me, please. So if you happen to see the thumbnail on today's video, I put the pictures that she shared with us, and she's got this photo of her brew basket that is looking kind of coarse, the coffee grounds. And then she also has a picture of the grinder that she's using. She's using the OXO grinder, and you can kind of see that it's a bit setted. I'm not sure on the OXO which way is which for finer or the coarse, but she has it set to the left of medium or middle. And so we're going to see what we talk about. Good morning, Mom. Rusty. Yeah, rainy New Jersey. Yeah, man, I hear you on that. Moist. Good to see you, man. How are things in Singapore? I guess it's getting kind of late at night, huh? And yeah, here in Baltimore, like I guess Rusty's been experiencing and Mom's been experiencing up in New York, this is day 3 of rain. And man, my backyard looks pretty flooded at the moment. Good thing I have got muck boots to use. All right, so what Tamar is experiencing is that she is grinding her coffee, putting it in the Hario V60, but she's getting like 6-minute brew times. And that's a really long time to wait. Typically, we're going to say that you're going to get over extracted characters in that kind of coffee. But what are the factors that are leading up to that? So she's using 20 grams of coffee to 12 ounces of water. Not a bad ratio, a little bit shorter than what I like to use. I like to use 24 to 12. I mean, 20 is not a huge difference. And then her photo shows that it looks a bit coarse, so there's probably a lot of fines. So that kind of maybe tells us that maybe her grinder does a lot of inconsistencies. But the whole thing here is that what we're talking about, she's using the V60, and I don't have a V60 here. I just have the W60, and this is the W60. The W60 is essentially the same. Again, a large orifice center with just one. It has these Venturi ridges. Now the V60 is a little straighter. These are a little more Venturi-ish. So, So Moise is asking, how long is each morning stream usually? So each morning stream, it really depends. Anywhere between, I think we've had them as short as 15 minutes and as long as almost an hour. I try not to go over an hour, and I try to keep it as short as possible just because, it's meant to be kind of a little bite-sized morsel, not a long meandering marathon like the coffee and cigars live stream. That one's a good 2 hours plus. And actually this week, tomorrow's stream there is going to be quite a long one, I think, because we're going to be back on the road with Reinhard Pohrek and George Brightman. We're going to be heading down to Alexandria, Virginia, to Old Virginia Tobacco to do the show there. So that'll be a longer one. But okay, so back to this. Let's say the what do you call it? This is, let me get this out of the way here. My little MacBook Air that is finally biting the dust. So here's the thing. These are the basic things that I think that are important when it comes to brewing coffee. You have coffee, how much coffee you're using, and then how much water you're using. Then there's the water temperature and exposure time of the water to the coffee. Those are the 4 major factors, I think, that are impacting your brew that you have to control, and they're relatively easy to control. So how much coffee is very easy to control. We can just use a scale, weigh it out. There it is. All done. And then how much water? Easy enough to weigh that as well. Then there is the exposure time that we kind of know is going to be we want to have it somewhere between 3.5 to 4 minutes. So that's a known quantity. And what was the last? Oh, the temperature of the water. The temperature of the water, we can control that as well. So whether you're just going straight off the boil or you're actually using a temperature controlled kettle, Those are four variables that can be quite readily controlled and consistently controlled. And I think that if you have those managed, then there's only the fifth element that you have to worry about. W60, shout out to Pete Licata. Yes, thank you, Pete. Pete actually gave me this one last year's SCA Expo. And it's the fifth element that you have to worry about, which is the grind itself of the coffee. And so the grind is the part that you can control. That's the part that is the question mark, because regardless of what your grind setting says, right? Like, how do I have this set? This is set to somewhat round medium. As we saw with the last 2 days brews, we're going the first day we had this brew that I thought took too long, so we wanted to go a little bit coarser. But then, we changed coffees, and so by changing coffees, we're also changing not just the variety of the coffee, but the roast profile, the density, the age, and those are all going to have impacts on the way the grinder performs, right? So one coffee at one grind setting will not necessarily grind the exact same way with a different coffee at the same grind setting, because the different densities, because they're different coffees, those are going to have impacts on it. So you do have to be a little bit flexible, which is why I think if you control the other four variables, you only have the grind variable to adjust on a regular basis. And so this woman, Tamar, is having this problem where she is running long brew times. We already know all the components that she has. We know that her long brew times, and she wants to go back down to 3, let's say 4 minutes. Really, the best way to do that is to adjust the grind. Now, a lot of people will, especially the other commenters, were like, I got this one from the Facebook group Poor Coffee Lovers. A lot of other commenters were talking about things like, oh, go look at other people's recipes. And it's like, it's not about recipe, right? I think that these are principles that can apply with whatever, regardless of the recipe that you're using for the actual brewing, right? So the thing is that regardless of the recipe, it's always about resistance of the coffee to the water. And so once you understand that and can adjust your grind of the coffee to whatever recipe you're using to give you the right resistance, will work here. Now, here's another thing to keep in mind is that this is a very large orificed coffee brewer. Now, if we take this bee house, which is still dirty from yesterday, right? We have more restrictive flow through the bee house. Your grind probably will be different for the bee house than it will be for the W60 or for the V60, because there's going to be different levels of resistance to the water flow. And that's really what we're trying to control. All right, so let's give this a try and see what happens. We've got our water kind of lightly boiling. We're going to need our scale. I forgot to, after yesterday's show, I totally forgot to, to recharge the Timu scale. So I don't have that. I'm having that charging now. All right, so we've got a coffee here. This is from the Hawaii Coffee Association from my buddy Ralph, who was the president of the HCA. And last year, he was like, hey, man, do you need some coffee before we left the trade show? And I was like, yeah. So he gave me this. I have no idea what's in here. This is just an empty bag that they filled with some kind of coffee. It could be Kona, it could be Molokai, it could be Kauai, it could be Maui. I don't really know, but we're gonna find out. Let's show it a little bit in our monkey pod. Ooh, there's a nice chocolatey cacao aroma coming from it. But as you can see here, the beans are relatively late roasted, and looks like Typica beans. I'm really just saying that because most of the coffee grown in that area is Typica, so not like I really have any specific knowledge of what I'm doing. And Rusty says that he remembers bagging the mystery coffees. Yeah, these are just mystery Hawaii coffees. All right, let's do some 24 grams. Or maybe we'll replicate hers. Let's do 20 grams. 20 grams of coffee. Now, next week, we're heading off to the Specialty Coffee Association Trade Expo trade show at the McCormick Center, McCormick Place in Chicago, Illinois. So if you're out in the Chicago area, you might want to consider coming down, or at least there's a couple other events that are happening around the expo. So the expo, it's kind of expensive to attend as a regular person, which I don't know why they do that. They're so myopic in this world, in this sense, because let's say I go to last week, a week or two ago, we were at Pack Expo East. The week after SCA, I'll be in Vegas for the National Association of Broadcasters. A lot of the shows that I'll attend throughout the year, trade shows, tend to be free for the show floor. They'll give you free show floor passes so that you can, engage with the vendors and you can get to know their organization. The SCA, Special Coffee Association, they're like fools. They don't do that. They want to just charge you $350, and it's like, why are you doing that? Why don't you help us grow the industry rather than it's really a disappointment. They're a disappointing organization in many, many respects as far as promoting our industry and give people the chance to go. But anyway, there are a couple events that are happening. I'll give you a little bit of a heads up on them. So on the 11th, there's something called the World Cafe event at the Kimball Arts Center starting at noon in Chicago. That's going to be a whole 4 or 5 hours of coffee talk, coffee industry events. It's called World Cafe event at Kimball Arts Center. And then after that, starting at 6 p.m., there's something called Oscillations Coffee. Again, another coffee gathering think tank where people are just going to be talking and presenting different ideas on coffee. And that's going to be at Reggie's Rock Club until 10 p.m. So if you're in Chicago and you have the time and you want to check it out, those are two events that I know that are happening. There's also something called the Stronger Than Coffee screening. It's a documentary about coffee starting at 5 p.m. on Friday the 12th. That's happening at a place called 50 East Washington Street. I forgot the name of the actual physical center. But those are some events that are happening around the event. So if you happen to be in the area and you don't want to fork out the money, which I totally understand, those might be ways to go. All right, so what we're going to do is now we're going to grind. Rusty says, didn't they used to open Sunday to non-SCA members? But that was only, I don't know. Maybe. I don't really pay that close attention to what they're doing, especially around the Barista Championships. I don't think they did that last year. They should, at the very least. They really should just have trade show floor passes because it helps to promote the industry. Anyway. It's not like this is the Premium Cigar Association, and they're actually limited by law to who can actually participate in their event. All right, let's go start up the grinder. Let's bring this over here. All right. 20 grams of coffee. So here's something that happens a lot. You can see this one bean is floating right here, stuck on one of the supports. You'll see, if you recall, you'll see me at times at the old Cafe du Spro when we were doing the live stream there that I would actually kind of reach into the grinder and stick my hand in. Don't do that. That's a bad thing. But what I'll really do is I'll just go in there, just knock that off. But the reality is it's better to shut the grinder off before you do that, because the reality is you could be careless, you could be foolish, and you could go farther than you think and get your finger caught in the actual burrs. And if you look here, you can see the burr set kind of under there. And if you just by chance happen to, fit your fingers down in there, it will be a very bad day. All right, so we got our coffee. Let's look here. There's our coffee. We're going to get our scale. We need our brewer. There's our brewer there, and we need a, what do you call it? We need a filter. I like to use Millena number 4 filters with the Hario stuff because, it's very easy to use. And what I like to do is they're not compatible as far as shape-wise, right? Like this is a conical and this is a flat bottom conical. What I like to do is I'll just take them and then see how it's seamed here, point to point, fold it over. Just like that. And then open it up, and you've got a great little cone. Now, it is a bit of an oblong cone, right? It's not a perfectly shaped cone like you get from the factory, but we make it like this. And then we always put the seam to the handle. Why do we put the seam to the handle? For no particular reason other than we want consistency. So when we're teaching our baristas how to brew pour over coffee, we always teach them this method. So everything is always uniform. They don't have to think about it. They're not going to futz with it. And they're going to match the handles to handles, seam to handle. Everything is like in line. It's less about an impact on the actual finished coffee, but more about a better working method so that you don't have to think too much and you can focus on what's important. So we're going to take our coffee, put it in here. And then, of course, just level it out. And now we need to just set it up here so you can see the time. Let me reset the scale. Jack up the heat. Oops. Let me grab our kettle. Oh, yeah, we are definitely getting a lot of good boiling off of this thing now today. Now, it's a very heavy boil, so we're pouring into the kettle. The kettle, of course, is going to be a little bit colder, so we're going to have an initial dive in the heat of the water, especially the early part. So I'm pouring a lot more water than I normally would so that I can help to keep the heat even. What temperature are we brewing? We are brewing just off the boil today. I tend not to worry too much about the temperature. If I really have to set the temperature, I'm going to set to somewhere between 195 to 198 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm expecting a good 10, maybe 12 degree plunge by doing it this way. All right, let's go. We're going to go to 75 grams for our saturation. As you can see, it looks like it's flowing pretty well. 77 grams. You can push that down if you want. Ooh. So 22, 24 seconds now, and we can start to add more water. Now, what I like to do is, now she did say 12 ounces, so we're going to go to 350 milliliters of water. The only thing we're really changing today is the quantity of the coffee that we brew with. We're not going to change our technique. We're going to look to do 100 gram pours at 1 minute intervals. So we would like to see ourselves be around 200 grams total here by the 2 minute mark, which is still, actually, we're only reaching the 1 minute threshold now. So we're a little bit fast. We can go a little bit slower. We can control our pour just a little bit. I already feel that this grind may be a little bit too coarse for this. Now, the difference to what Tamar is experiencing and what I'm experiencing here is that we're, of course, using two very different grinders. She's using the OXO, which I've never used. I have no idea how that performs. And I'm using a very old Barazza Virtuoso. So right now, we're just going to go a little bit slowly because we're at 173, 138. We want to, 1 minute 38. So we're almost to 2 minutes. So we're getting close to the 200 at 2 minute mark. And Moise is asking, shouldn't you rinse the paper filter before brewing? Lance Hendrick made a video about filter coffee explaining that pre-wetting is quite important. And I have not seen Lance's video. However, I also did a video about 2, maybe 3 years ago now, where we basically took all of these different paper filters, soaked them in a cupping format for about 4 minutes to as though it was a regular brew, and then tasted each of the waters from those papers. And the reality is that the only ones that really required pre-wetting in order to remove the paper taste were the brown filters. The ones that everybody touted as being the better ones were always the ones that were worse. But the bleach filters, we never had any issue with them. And who was it that was saying? Someone was, I think Michael was saying something about how he noticed that there's some kind of flavor in the Kalita 185 filters. We were trying that out last week. Maybe there's a little bit, but I have not found there's a need for pre-wetting for white bleach paper filters at all. If you're using brown, God, you got to really bleed that out. You really want to pump like maybe a good 10 ounces through it because it's really heavy. All right, so 253, we're a little bit behind 313 because I'm talking. This is the problem. I keep talking too much. Now, where I do think that pre-wetting helps is, let's say you're in an environment where the filter may blow away, like it's windy, you're outside, or let's say in your AeroPress and you want it to stick to the filter holder. Those are times. Okay, so we're 345, 316. We're a little bit behind. So maybe the grind is okay. Or maybe it isn't. It's hard to say when I'm spending time chatting too much. 336, let's go. We're going to push it all the way to the finish at 350. All right, that's good. Let me just return. So we're 350, 415. So a little bit long. I'm going to return the water back to the kettle. Waste not, want not, you know what I'm saying? Eduardo, good morning, Eduardo. And Eduardo says, same as in AeroPress filters. Yeah, I agree. The AeroPress filters, especially since I'm doing inverted method most of the time, if you don't pre-wet that and you turn it over, it tends to fall away and you're like, oh gosh. And then you knock it, and then you move and you knock it over and it spills everywhere. Oh, it's really an unpleasant experience. And Moy says, I think Lance talked about how it lessens bypass. I tend not to worry about things like this bypass thing. I haven't really, but to be honest, I don't worry about it because I haven't really taken the time to really study that and worry too much about it. What I'm really looking for is less about the geekiness of coffee brewing and like trying to. I'm not putting this on a VST refractometer to measure TDS. I don't care about that, right? I already know that pretty much at a particular ratio of coffee to water, I'm going to get a very reasonable, as long as the grind is relatively correct, I'm going to get an acceptable TDS or one that I'm going to find enjoyable. And ultimately, the only thing that matters, to my mind, the only thing that matters is the taste. How does it taste to you? And like what I might tell you is amazing, you might hate. And what does that even mean? Like, does that, just because I've got 20 plus years of experience in the field, does that mean that my assessment of a coffee is greater than yours if you don't like it? No, that's craziness. Like the video over last weekend when we were at the Kakian Coffee is a great example of that. My friend Kimberly, we've been friends since college, right? I'm obviously a long time in the field of coffee. So we're drinking these two coffees. One is a dark blend of like traditional, more, more traditional style of Kisaten style coffee. And then the other one is this iced cold brew geisha light tea. Like, and even she describes it in the way she's, well, it kind of has this tea character to it, but she hates it. She loves the darker one, but she hates the tea-like one. And the geisha is well regarded as one of the best coffees in the world. But does that mean? What does any of that mean? It really doesn't mean anything. If you don't like it, you don't like it. It reminds me of my friend Frank in Bangkok. He's like, if I wanted to drink tea, I'd just buy tea, and it would cost me a lot less. I was like, well, I can't argue with that. I can tell you that these are the reasons why coffee people think that this is 90 plus points or this is 85 below, but I can't tell you to like it. And that's one of the things that I think is interesting. There's a whole change in the coffee industry where um, the way that the Special Coffee Association is trying to push the change in our valuation of coffee from something that's more objective to something that's very subjective, right? Because the complaint is that people are using subjectivity in the way they purchase. So, for example, if four coffee professionals agree that, hey, this coffee is an 85 quality coffee, but maybe only two of them will buy the coffee from the farmer because they like it, and the other two don't like it. Somehow there's a flaw there, and they want to make it so that we're going to use the hedonic scale to say that I like it, I don't like it. And it's like, it's not about liking and don't liking, right? It's about we're trying to assess the objective quality of the coffee. And then each of the individual green buyers has to determine whether or not that particular coffee will fit into their program, however it might fit. I don't know. Okay, that's a lot of talking. That's a lot of talking. All right, we're going to just dump that out. I'll put that in the sink because I probably won't rinse it at all. And yeah, there it is. It's now 8 minutes. I've been talking for 4 minutes, babbling on and on. All right, so let's get our cup here. I'm going to pour. This is our mystery Hawaii coffee. I don't know if it's Kona. I don't know if it's Kauai. I don't know what Maui, or could be from anywhere in Hawaii. It is from Hawaii Coffee Association, so it should be somewhat nice. It had some nice cacao aromas when we were just smelling the beans. It smells pleasant enough. Would you see a little bit on the lighter side? Pleasant. Like it's not a wow coffee. It's not like that other Kona we had from Paradise Roasters, that SL34 with the champagne natural process that's got a lot of like oomph to it. This is just nice. This is just nice, pleasant coffee. But going back to what Tamar was asking, she's asking she's like saying that my grind looks very coarse. And if you look at the photo that I'm using for today's thumbnail, it does look very coarse. But what it looks like doesn't necessarily tell us much about the performance. So it's all about observing the performance of your coffee. So in her case, she says that her brew took 6 minutes. So if your brew is taking 6 minutes to flow through the grinds, right? The water's taking 6 minutes to flow through the grinds. In her case, she's using 20 grams to 350 milliliters of water. Regardless of how it looks, it's telling you that it's too much resistance. So how do we reduce that resistance? By coarsening the grind. And, that could very well be that those coarse pieces, that are on the top, it could be that the coarse pieces flow to the top and the more fines go to the bottom, because maybe there's inconsistency in the way that grinder is grinding the coffee. And she's using the OXO grinder. And I'm not familiar with that, whether it's a BREW grinder. It looks like a BREW grinder. But if you recall ever using a whirly bird grinder, the ones that blades that spin, you can grind that. If you look at it, there's going to be a lot of fines. There's going to be a lot of coarse pieces. So just because you can see some coarse pieces on the top of your coffee bed doesn't necessarily mean that it's consistently that way throughout the coffee bed. It always depends on the grinder itself. Moy says, how do I submit questions for your streams? Like today's stream is about how to prevent long brews. Just put them in the comments. Anywhere in the comments. You want to put them in here? We can do it the next day or two. If you want to put it in the replay comments, put them there. I will see all the comments at some point. So if you want to send them to me on Instagram, you could do that as well. onocoffee with the number 4 at the very end. So I try to make it simple. And I go to, sometimes I'll just use the ones online because, well, no one submitted any questions this week. So I was like, well, I need to find some questions so that we have something to talk about instead of me just babbling on about some, I don't know, Dune 2 or something like that, which I haven't seen yet. Speaking of shows, I have been binging for the last 2 days Shogun on FX. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's also based off the James Clavell novel about James Blackwater, or Black, whatever his name is, the English guy that goes to Japan on a Dutch ship and gets wrecked there. I don't know how he got there. Who cares? But and his whole journey with Sanada's character of Hiroyuki Sanada's character is actually based on Ieyasu Tokugawa, the actual guy that brought about the change for the Tokugawa era that led to the Meiji Restoration in the late 1800s. That led up to that restored the emperor, the imperial family to power, and whose line continues to today, right? And what are we in? We're not in the Heisei era anymore. We're in the new era, which just started in 2019. And I was just reading, but I can't remember. Anyway, all right. So hope that helps to clarify any questions you might have about, Tamar's question about why does my brew take so long, even though the grinds look really coarse. We're only, especially when you're looking at the grind bed, you're only seeing the very top. You don't really see what's underneath. And a lot of times, a lot of the finer stuff will settle. So you're getting a lot of fines down there. You just want to go a little bit coarser and then work from there. And so, like I've said in previous videos, as you're brewing, like today we brewed, if I wasn't talking so much, I think it took a little bit longer. But I think that brew-wise, grind setting for this coffee is pretty good. If it was taking really longer, I might go a little bit coarser. If it takes too fast, if it's going too fast, I might go a little bit finer, right? I don't necessarily, and this is, I think this is true for any recipe that you're using. So if you're a devotee of any particular school of recipes out there, these principles still apply. You still have to match your grind to that recipe. All right. That's pretty much it for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. Back again tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern time here on the Coffee Q&A. So hope you have a wonderful day out there, whether you're in the US or Asia or in Canada. Do you have a video on your brew method? I don't necessarily I haven't really taken the time to make a video about the specific brew methods. Oh, actually, I have. I'm sorry. I'm not really telling you the truth. So I have a secondary channel called BREW Coffee. I'll put that here. I'll put the spelling here. Craig, what's going on, man? It's called BREW Coffee. I'll put that in the comments. BREW Coffee, that's the name of the other YouTube channel that I have. If you go to that channel, there's a whole catalog of videos of how we brew the coffees at BREW. So it's essentially, it shows you exactly what we do in the cafe environment and how we do it. Our exact recipes and techniques are chronicled in that. So it's in some respects, if you wanted to start your own specialty coffee cafe and you wanted to learn some brew methods, those are basically a cheat sheet for you. So those are some videos. I don't necessarily have too many brew videos on this. Well, I guess we do have quite a few brew videos, but no V60 ones. A lot of the times we talk about our theories is mostly on this live stream. So, all right. So that's pretty much, Mom. Good to see you as always. Craig, sorry to join us. We're about to sign off. I'll put that away. So hope you have a wonderful day out there. And let me know if you have any questions, thoughts, and suggestions. Happy to hear them. And then until next time, until tomorrow, have a great one.